Today is part 44 of God's redemptive administration that appears in the book of Daniel. Today we'll be focusing on Daniel chapter 11 and focus on the period of the Seleucid reign. So we're continuing to examine 11th chapter, and this time we'll be focusing on the Seleucid reign, the Seleucid dynasty. Daniel 11:31-32, let's read. And forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and do away with the regular sacrifice. And they will set up the abomination of desolation, and by smooth words he will turn to godlessness those who act wickedly towards the covenant. But the people who know their God will display strength and take action. Amen. So let's kind of review what we learned last time and continue more. So 539 BC is when the fall of Babylon occurred. Right, Babylon was a great nation. It was like a big empire, and it ended, and that's 539 BC. It was the last king, and the Bible records it. Belshazzar. He was having a feast, a banquet, and then a finger of a man appeared at the wall and started writing all these letters that no one could recognize. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. I have measured you, and I found you lacking. And so there's a judgment of your lacking. And now the Babylon, it falls. Then in 539 to 331 BC, it was Mede-Persia Empire. Persia. And so there are 4 kings of Daniel 11 verse 2. There are 4 kings. It doesn't say the names of the 4 kings, but when we look in, we know from the biblical scriptures that the first king is Cyrus and his son Cambyses, that we know through history. Then Darius, what happened during his reign? Ezra 6:15 shows that on the 6th year of his reign, in the month of Adar, on the 3rd day, which is the 12th month, 3rd day, it was the completion of the Zerubbabel temple. And during that time it would happen during the reign of Darius. And then his son Ahasuerus. And we know he is the husband of Esther, another book in the Bible. And another name for him is Xerxes the First, and we know that's what he goes by in the history. And then from 331 to 323 BC, it's the reign of Alexander the Great of Greece. So Alexander the Great, he's the one in power. And we see this in Daniel 11 verse 3. And the mighty king will arise, and he will rule with great authority and do as he pleases. And this is referring to Alexander the Great. And this was his empire. All those yellow areas was Alexander the Great's empire. Macedonia, that's Greece of today. And then Asia Minor, Mesopotamia region, then Egypt, Persia. This whole area, Alexander, at his young age, in his 20s, he conquered it all. He dies early at a young age. And then with his death, from 323 to 301 BC, there is now a conflict, a battle to take power. It's a struggle for power. It's a period of Diadache period. And so after 301 BC, the Greek Empire was divided into 4 kingdoms: Ptolemaic, Seleucid, Lysimachian, and Cassandrian. And so that's Ptolemy took over here. This is Seleucus, and then this is, and these two become part of Seleucid later on. These two, Lysimander and Cassandrian, they all become part of Seleucid later on, right? And so last time we examined the period of the Ptolemaic. Here is Palestinian region with Israel. This is where Israel is located. And our focus is here, right? especially Israel. Who conquers Israel? And because this is very important in the redemptive historical perspective. And so 320 to 198 BC, who was in control of that area? Ptolemy. It's a period of Ptolemaic reign over Israel. And we see this in Daniel 11, 5 to 16. And this is what we examined last time. And then what happens? Now the northern king, Seleucus. Now it becomes Seleucid reign. They then take over power and they control that region of Israel from 198 to 164 BC. And this is recorded in Daniel 11, 17 to 35. And so Daniel 11, 36 to 45, that's the last of this chapter. It talks about a very famous king in the Seleucid dynasty in that reign. It focuses on that. Antiochus IV, Epiphanes. Antiochus Epiphanes. He is very famous for being a very wicked king. In the perspective of Jews, he destroyed the temple of God and he set up idols. But in Daniel 11, 36 to 45, it doesn't just end with only Antiochus Epiphanes, but it's kind of also foreshadowing Antichrist in the future, in the last days. But today we'll be examining the period of the Seleucid dynasty. Last time we examined and compared the Ptolemaic dynasty to the Seleucid dynasty family line. Right? Ptolemy was to the south and Seleucid dynasty was to the north. So Ptolemy, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, they're all called Ptolemy. Father to son, then that son, grandson. And so it's always father to son relationship from 1 to the 5th. So the 3rd son is the 4th son is the 5th. So it's very easy to see the relationship here. But Seleucus is different. It's a little bit more complicated. So we have Seleucid first. His son is Antiochus the first. Why is he not Seleucid II? It would have been so easy for us to remember if it was Seleucid the second. But no, it was Antiochus the first. And then his son, Antiochus first. Is it back to Seleucus? No, it's actually Antiochus the second. Then how about the Antiochus second son? They went back to Seleucus. So it's Seleucus the second. Seleucus then had Seleucus the third and Antiochus the third. They're brothers. So he had 2 sons here. And then Antiochus the third has 2 sons. Seleucus the fourth and Antiochus the fourth. They're brothers too. So Ptolemy the fifth. Antiochus the third. And we examined that and we stopped there last time in our Bible study. And during this time, the Jewish region, so if the Ptolemy the first to Ptolemy the fifth, they all ruled over Israel, that region of Palestine. But then with the Seleucid dynasty, they took over after the fifth. Now the Antiochus the third, from 223 to 187 BC. Daniel 11 verse 17. Let's read. And he will set his face to come with the power of his whole kingdom, bringing with him a proposal of peace, which he will put into effect. He will also give him the daughter of women to ruin it, but she will not take a stand for him or be on his side. So it says, who is this? He shall set his face. He is referring to Antiochus the third. He. So this is Antiochus the third. He's the northern kingdom in the Seleucid dynasty. And so the Antiochus the third, he sets his face to come with the power of his whole kingdom, bringing with him a proposal of peace. Who is he having a proposal of peace with? He's having a peace treaty with Ptolemy the fifth. He will make an agreement with him. Him refers to Ptolemy the fifth. So the northern kingdom, Antiochus III, is determined and he makes a peace treaty with the southern kingdom, Ptolemy V. So they're going to have a peace treaty. How? How are they trying to have a good relationship? Well, he will also give him the daughter of a woman to ruin it. So he's going to give a daughter I'm going to send a daughter to you. It's a political marriage. And what's the reason? Is it to have a good relationship? No, but to look like you have a good relationship, but to ruin it, to swallow it up. So to ruin it, that's the purpose of the political marriage. But that she's not able to take a stand for him. She's not able to fulfill it. She's not going to be able to do it. So Antiochus III married his daughter Cleopatra first to Ptolemy V in the attempt to gain control of the entire Ptolemaic kingdom. So we all know Cleopatra. We've heard of her name. Isn't that Caesar? Isn't that Cleopatra? But no, it's not that Cleopatra. This is Cleopatra the First. We know Cleopatra, the famous Cleopatra. That's Cleopatra the Seventh. That's the seventh one, the one that we know of in the Roman Empire. But Cleopatra the Seventh is from the region of Egypt, right? But Antiochus III sends his daughter, Cleopatra first. And then starting from then on, Cleopatra, the name, kept on repeating itself in that region of Egypt. And it goes all the way to Cleopatra VII later in the famous that we know, Cleopatra. So he sent his daughter Cleopatra to Ptolemy V to gain control of the whole Ptolemaic kingdom. However, his plan failed because Cleopatra first remained loyal to her husband rather than supporting her father. So she loved her husband. So Cleopatra I loved her husband, and so it did not work out. That plan was ruined. And now Daniel 11 verse 18 says, "Then he would turn his face to the coastlands and capture many." So now the south is not working out, so he's now looking towards the coastland to conquer what he can conquer. So that's Antiochus III. But a commander will put a stop to his scorn against him. Moreover, he will repay him for his scorn. So who is this general, this commander? That is the Roman general Lucius Scipio. If you know about history, General Scipio, and you may say he's famous. He doesn't have a nation, but so he's the younger brother of General Scipio Africanus, who defeated Hannibal of Carthage. So he's the younger brother of General Scipio Africanus, who defeated Hannibal of Carthage. So anyways, this Roman commander, so the way to the coastland was also blocked for Antiochus III. And at that time, the battle with the Roman was the Battle of Magnesia. So after Antiochus III's defeat at the Battle of Magnesia from 190 to 188 BC, Antiochus III was forced to pay a massive annual indemnity to Rome, and his son Antiochus IV, along with about 20 others, was taken to Rome as a hostage. So his son, Antiochus IV, with 20 others, were taken as hostages to Rome. This is the wicked king that we know of, Antiochus Epiphanes. If he just continued living in Rome as a hostage, we don't know how the history would have changed. But he returned. He came back to his home. And then we know of this Antiochus Epiphanes, the wicked one. And so Daniel 11:19, so he would turn his face toward the fortresses of his own land, but he would stumble and fall and be found no more. So Antiochus III attempted to regain his power, but was killed by rebels. So he will stumble and fall and be found no more. So he attempted to regain his power, but was killed by rebels. So after he was killed, his son, Seleucus IV, is now in power from 187 to 175 BC. Daniel 11:20. Then in his place one will arise who will send an oppressor through the jewel of his kingdom. Yet within a few days he will be shattered, though neither in anger nor in battle. So the one who will replace him, that's Seleucus IV. He's the one who succeeded him. He succeeds him. After Antiochus III, is Seleucus IV. So then it says tax collector, revenue collector. Heliodorus, the chief treasurer. Remember, with Antiochus III's daughter, Cleopatra I, was sent down, and then she loved her husband so much she doesn't ruin the nation, and then he goes to the coastland, but then he lost against the Roman commander, and then he has to pay indemnity, and he needs money for that, and so he has to collect taxes to repay that indemnity. And so the tax collector, that's the oppressor, he's going to be sent throughout the kingdom, and his name is Heliodorus, the chief treasurer. But Seleucus IV was assassinated by Heliodorus, the whom he had appointed. So he was killed off by someone he appointed. Then what happens? Then finally Antiochus I, as we have examined. Antiochus IV, he was taken as hostage to Rome. He lost that battle, and he returned. So Antiochus IV, Seleucus IV, they are brothers. But the Heliodorus, the chief treasurer, kills off Seleucus IV. Why? Because he wanted political greed. He wanted to be in power. Seleucus, he had two sons, and then he made them lose power, and then Antiochus IV is in Rome as a hostage. But he's so wicked and cunning, scheming. He sends someone else as a hostage in Rome in place of him, and he comes back. So, Daniel 11:21. And in his place a despicable person will arise, on whom the honor of kingship has not been confirmed. But he will come in a time of tranquility and seize the kingdom by intrigue. And so someone who's going to... Seleucus IV died. So who will succeed him? A despicable person. And who is this despicable, a contemptible person? One who was never considered worthy to be king. That's Antiochus IV. He's not worthy to be king. He was sent as a whole hostage to Rome. He came back home. It was hard to do that, right? So he's such a despicable person, but he will gain that kingdom. He will become king. So Antiochus IV eliminated his political rivals. He killed off Demetrius. He's the firstborn of Seleucus the firstborn, and then that's like his Antiochus IV. He's like his nephews. These are his nephews. Demetrius is the firstborn. Antiochus is the secondborn. And then Heliodorus is that treasurer who killed off Seleucus IV. And so he kills all of his political rivals, like his nephews. He kills them. And eventually seizes the throne through lies, intrigue, and cunning deception. And so that's Antiochus IV. So he comes to power in such a despicable way. So now he's in power. So the forced war between Antiochus IV and Ptolemy. There's 3 wars. The first war is recorded in Daniel 11:22-24. And the overflowing forces will be flooded away before him, and shattered, and also the prince of the covenant. And after an alliance is made with him, he will practice deception, and he will go up and gain power with a small force of people. So right now, number-wise, the southern kingdom, Ptolemy, has more numerous people. So in a battle, they will win because the south has a stronger force. And the north thinks they will lose. But he practices deception. He's really good at deception. He's very cunning. And so even with a small force of people, he gains power. In the time of tranquility, he will enter the richest parts of the realm, and he will accomplish what his fathers never did, nor his ancestors. He would distribute plunder, booty, and possessions among them, and he would devise his schemes against strongholds, but only for a time. So Antiochus IV of the north and Ptolemy of the south, this is their first war. So Antiochus IV formed alliances with neighboring nations, causing his enemies to let down their guard. With a relatively small army, he gradually expanded his kingdom into a powerful empire. So he formed alliances. We can attack him together. And so with his cunning, so even with a small army, he expanded his kingdom into a powerful empire. Now the second war between Antiochus IV and Ptolemy VI. So this is Ptolemy VI. And this is the second war in Daniel 11, 25 to 26. And so Ptolemy VI opposed them with an exceedingly great and powerful army. But his forces were scattered and the king was taken captive. This happened because those who plotted against him betrayed the king. So he had a powerful army. But why was he taken captive? Antiochus IV of the north, he's very cunning. He came up with a scheme. He plotted against him and made people betray the king. The people right below the king, if they betray the king, there's no way you can fight. Even if you have a powerful army, if you have people right below the king betray him, it's like lost, right? Daniel 11, 25 to 28. Just 25 and 26. And he will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south with a large army. So the king of the south will mobilize an extremely large and mighty army for war. But he will not stand, for schemes will be devised against him. And those who eat his choice food will destroy him, and his army will overflow, but many will fall down slain. So Antiochus IV, stirred up his strength and courage against the king of the south and the large army, but the king of the south, mobilizes an extremely large and mighty army for war. So Antiochus IV cannot win against Ptolemy VI because he has such a great army. So now he comes up with schemes to devise against them. And so those who eat his choice food, those are the people that are closest to him. He schemes and makes them betray the king and destroy him. And so that's how he loses. The south loses. After his power struggles with Ptolemy VI, Antiochus IV returned to his own land with great plunder. And that's in verse 27-28. As for both kings, their hearts will be intent on evil, and they will speak lies to each other at the same table. But it will not succeed, for the end is still to come at the appointed time. Then he will return to his land with much plunder, but his heart will be set against the Holy Covenant, and he will take action, and then return to his own land. So he was set against, his heart will be set against the Holy Covenant. So he returned to his own land, but it says he's set against the Holy Covenant. The holy place is the temple of God, Jerusalem. So he was passing by that road back home, and he went into the temple. Antiochus IV, who went out to fight. He defiled the temple. At that time, Antiochus arrogantly entered the sanctuary and plundered the golden altar and the lampstand. And so he entered the temple. It doesn't appear in the Bible, but in the external sources, such as 1st Maccabees, it's recorded there that he entered the temple and plundered it. In the 5th book of the Redemptive History series, page 358 says, in his arrogance, he entered the temple, which was forbidden for Gentiles. He then destroyed the golden altar and the lampstand, causing great sorrow all over Israel. And the rulers and the elders groaned in lament. This is in 1st Maccabees 1:20-28. So they were worshiping God. But he suddenly came in, say that we have a church and we're worshiping God, but somebody's just intruded during the worship and destroyed everything in the temple, in the church. It's like that. And so this was a great sorrow all over Israel. But it was so natural for him to enter the temple. Why? In book number 6, page 271, Menelaus also incited Antiochus IV to profane the temple and urged him to slaughter Menelaus' own people. Antiochus IV entered the Holy of Holies to plunder it, and it was the high priest Menelaus who guided him. So somebody incited him. Somebody urged him to do all these things, and that was Menelaus, the high priest. So on his way back home, he dropped by Jerusalem, and the high priest Menelaus is like, oh, welcome, come here. Led him to the temple, guided him inside. So the people of faith, how dare you do this? That's what they thought. But the high priest Menelaus opened the door himself. So how corrupt it was during that time. Now, the third war between Antiochus IV and Ptolemy VI. Daniel 11:29-30. At the appointed time, he will return and come into the south. But this last time, it will not turn out the way it did before. For ships of Kittim will come against him. Therefore, he will be disheartened and will return and become enraged at the Holy Covenant and take action. So he will come back and show regard for those who forsake the Holy Covenant. So he's going to come south for the third war against Ptolemy. But it will not turn out the way it did before. So he's going to lose, right? Well, so the ships of Kittim, this is like the intervention of Rome. So when Antiochus IV campaigned against Egypt, proved less successful than before because of Roman intervention, he intensified his persecution of Jerusalem in retaliation. And so he was not successful against Ptolemy, which is Egypt, because of the Roman intervention, the ships of Kittim. And he retaliates and puts all that anger out on Jerusalem. So he defiled the sanctuary, the fortress. Daniel 11:31, and forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress. Second, he abolished the regular daily sacrifice. So that's worship. He abolished it. Daniel 11:31, do away with the daily sacrifices. Little number 3, he set up an idol, a statue of Zeus on the altar of the temple, the abomination that causes desolation. Daniel 11:31 says, and they will set up an abomination of desolation. So they set up an idol in the temple of God on its altar. And then he corrupted those who violated the covenant with flattery. So if they violated God's covenant, he flattered them. Like he supported that. Everyone, there's great sorrow in the land. There are people that are so upset by what he's doing. But he goes into the temple. Menelaus, the high priest, is the one who led a Gentile into a temple where they're not allowed. But there are other people that were also corrupt. You know what time it is now? You can't be like that anymore. We got to accept the new times. We got to accept the new ways. and accept what Antiochus IV is asking. They put aside their faith. They betrayed God. Daniel 11:32, and by smooth words he will turn to godlessness those who act wickedly towards the covenant. Today, the lights are very busy today. Daniel 11:36. Then the king will do as he pleases, and he will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and will speak monstrous things against the God of gods. And he will prosper until the indignation is finished, for that which is decreed will be done. So this is talking about Antiochus IV. He was not worthy to be king, but he took it with his cunning and his schemes. He killed off his political rivals, and he killed off his own nephews. He paid off people off. He paid off like Ptolemy's, I don't know, with money or what, but even he made them betray their own king and kill him, right? And then he exalted himself and magnified himself above every god. He called himself Epipanes, meaning God manifest. Like he considered himself a god, that he is a god above everything. I am a god, he said. I will do whatever I want. And he called himself Epipanes, Antiochus Epipanes, God manifest. The actions of Antiochus IV foreshadows the Antichrist, who will appear in the last days and oppose God. Revelation 13, verse 6. The Antichrist, they will defile the sanctuary. They will abolish the worship of God. And in the sanctuary where God is worshipped, they will set up idols, like abominations. And Revelation 13, verse 6, it says, and he will open his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. So this is the work of the Antichrist. So conclusion. No matter how powerful the kingdoms of this world that oppose God may be, they will ultimately perish. But God's covenantal people will prevail. We will have victory. God's covenantal people will prevail. They will have success and victory. So first, the end of Antiochus IV, who was so arrogant. You know, he was scheming and had such cunning. How did he end? When we look at the history, he suffered a painful illness as his body wasted away and died a miserable and ignominious death. Right? It says that his intestines decayed. Daniel 8:25 says, and through his shrewdness, he will cause deceit to succeed by his influence. And he will magnify himself in his heart. And he will destroy many while they are at ease. He will even oppose the prince of princes. But he will be broken without human agency. So he was so arrogant. He magnified himself. He destroyed many. But he opposed the King of Kings. Because he opposed the King of Kings, he'll be broken without it's not human hands that destroyed him. No, he had a horrible, painfully illness where his intestines decayed and wasted away. You can't block that. Daniel 11:45. He will pitch the tents of his royal pavilion between the seas and the beautiful holy mountain. Yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. So no one will help him. It's like decaying from within. So the period of the Antichrist activity is under God's sovereign decree and providence. He called himself God. He destroyed the temple worship. In the perspective of the Jews, they can't accept him. They're shocked. God, when will this continue? And they were saying, when will this continue? Let's read 11:35 of Daniel. And some of those who have insight will fall, in order to refine, purge, and make them pure, until the end time, because it is still to come at the appointed time. So, in order to refine, purge, and make them pure, until the end time. It is still to come at the appointed time. So there's an appointed time of God. In the perspective of believers, like, God is purifying you. He has planned it. This is all happening according to God's divine plan. So the power of the Antichrist, it needs to be solved. We need to be freed. But all of this period, all of this is under God's plan and his sovereign decree. If you don't know this, you may say, like, is God truly there? But in God's amazing redemptive administration, everything is happening all according to God's plan in his appointed time. In the end, God's covenantal people will stand firm, act with courage, and ultimately triumph. So God's covenantal people will stand firm, act with courage, and ultimately triumph. Let's read Daniel 11:32. And by smooth words he would turn to godlessness, those who act wickedly towards the covenant. But the people who know their God would display strength and take action. So you say, the people say they believe, but they went aside. But they turned to godlessness. Then in the end, they will fall by those voices. So we need to keep our faith to the very end. We can't just pretend to believe. Then you will turn by godlessness. But only the people who know their God would display strength and take action. They're the covenantal people of God. They will have strength and take action. And in the spiritual battles, in all the battles, will be victorious. There will be result of that battle, a victory, right? I bless in the name of the Lord that we will be so blessed.